13.3 and 13.4, limiting factors. Again, I've joined up these topics because they're so closely related. What if there were no organisms in a population died? And what would happen to the population? Well, if nobody died, the population would continue to grow. So what would happen to the resources that the population relies on? They would start to dwindle. They would start to run out of food. They would start to run out of space. They would really start to crowd themselves so much that their population could not continue to grow. So this graph here on the left shows what would happen if our population continued to grow and nobody ever died. So the number of organisms would increase over time, and they would increase exponentially. Okay, so lots of growth. It would just go straight up here. But what we know is that things die, things eat one another, populations move. So we can say that the growth of a population slows down as resources in the environment become scarce, so they run out of food or space. These resources are called limiting factors. So the population will kind of even out here. It'll maintain a specific number of organisms so long as there's no interruption to that ecosystem. This maintained number is called the carrying capacity. We'll come back to that. So limiting factors are things that can limit the number of individuals an environment can support. So for instance, limiting factors could be light, food, water, space. The carrying capacity, like I mentioned in that graph, is the number of individuals that a given environment can support. This is the population size when its growth or decline levels off. Okay, so the population that it maintains. There are abiotic and biotic limiting factors. Abiotic limiting factors are non-living factors that limit the size of a population by reducing the birth rate and increasing the death rate. Non-living means that it is not an animal, not a plant. It does not have living processes. So limiting factors could include water. Everything needs water. Water is not living. Matter. That could be the elements and like nutrients that a species needs. Again, elements are not living. And weather, like extreme hot or cold, too much or too little rain, changing climates. Those kinds of things are abiotic. Biotic limiting factors are, of course, interactions among living organisms that affect the population. This includes competition. So animals of the same or different species compete with their own, again, or other species for resources. The strong will outnumber the weak. So the strong ones will be more competitive and win in these kinds of situations, leaving the weak populations to die off. Predation. So predators obviously benefit from predator-prey relationships. The predator will eat the prey, but the prey also does benefit in some small way. Obviously not the ones that are eaten here, but predators usually eat the sick, the old, or weak, leaving the healthy behind because they're harder to catch. So those guys get more food, a healthier population, and they end up living, whereas again, the old, the weak, the sick die. And parasitism. So most parasites will only weaken things. They will not kill. So a parasite could be like a worm or ticks, those kinds of things. So they don't want to kill whatever they are living on, these organisms, because then they will die too. Their food source or whatever relationship they were getting from this, they've died. So they take nutrients usually from their host, a parasite, but they don't take enough to kill them typically. Reproduction rate and limiting factors. So without limiting factors, population size would just balloon. The ecosystem relies on biotic and abiotic limiting factors to keep the population in check. Some practice on page 263 and 267 of your textbook.